The Department of Justice has a choice to make, and their recent history shows it may not be the one that gun owners want from them. Today's video is important. We're at a crossroads in our lawsuit against the National Firearms Act. Soon, we'll know where Pam Bondi and President Trump's Department of Justice stands on the NFA. Before we get into the video, I want to hear what you guys think first. Comment down below what you think President Trump will do. Hi, I'm Ben Sanderson, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. Did you know that Gun Owners America is fighting for your rights every day? Recently, GOA halted universal background checks in Virginia and removed the taxes on NFA items, leading to our lawsuit to abolish the NFA completely. If you weren't already, go ahead and visit gunowners.org and become a member. We're working on abolishing all gun control, and we can't do it without your help. Okay, now back to the video. So as I mentioned before, today's video is an important one. Because of that, it's important for our members and viewers to understand the full circumstances leading up to this point. To set the stage, here's what's happening. By November 13th, the Justice Department will submit their brief in our case, GOA v. ATF, also known as the One Big Beautiful Lawsuit. As many of you know, we filed suit in the wake of the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, signed into law by President Trump. GOA and our allies in Congress fought hard to remove short-barreled rifles, shotguns, AOWs, and suppressors from the National Firearms Act. But thanks to an unelected bureaucrat known as the Senate parliamentarian, our pro-gun provisions were watered down to a simple tax removal. But thanks to a case from 1935, United States v. Constantine, the Supreme Court has said that a provision that does not generate revenue cannot be justified as a tax. And because the One Big Beautiful Bill Act signed into law by President Trump, the constitutional foundation that upheld the National Firearms Act has dissolved. It is now a fact of law that the NFA is unconstitutional. This is the basis of our lawsuit. Since we've gone to suit, we've gone through the typical motions and procedures when bringing a case to court. With that being said, we're about to get to a significant milestone in the case. We expect that on or before November 13th, the government will file their reply to our motion for summary judgment. This is extremely significant, because with this filing, we'll learn if President Trump and Pam Bondi supports our case against the NFA, or if they intend to defend this blatantly unconstitutional law. To be clear, this is a binary choice. There's no tacit support, no wink wink, nudge nudge. President Trump has a clear choice to make. Either you support gun rights and the intent of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or you don't. Doing either would have massive consequences for the administration. And as of right now, we at GOA are unsure of what the Department of Justice will do. On one hand, the Trump administration is by far the most pro-gun administration in history. With the signing of his executive order protecting Second Amendment rights and the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, gun owners have some serious pro-gun wins to thank the Trump administration for. And this Department of Justice has been pro-gun in so many ways. With Harmeet Dillon leading the Civil Rights Division at DOJ, we've seen pattern and practice investigations of the LA Sheriff's Department over CCW permit wait times. Harmeet herself even testified before the 7th Circuit in support of our lawsuit against the state of Illinois' so-called assault weapons ban.
The United States has a strong interest in ensuring that the Second Amendment is not relegated to a second-class right, and that all the law-abiding citizens of this circuit remain able to enjoy the full exercise of their Second Amendment rights, as binding Supreme Court precedent requires.
The fact that President Trump and elements of the Department of Justice have done these things, and more, should be commended. But on the other hand, we've recently seen some serious problems with the DOJ, as many viewers of this channel know. We've seen them oppose short-barrel rifle and suppressor ownership in the cases U.S. v. Peterson and U.S. v. Rush, describing these items as especially adaptable to criminal misuse, language taken straight out of the anti-gun playbook. Listen to DOJ's own words defending the NFA in the Peterson case. The lower court correctly held that the NFA's modest restrictions on suppressor possession do not violate the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Excuse me? The NFA's $200 tax, registration, fingerprints, and wait times are a modest restriction on suppressors? I don't think so. And where in the Second Amendment does it say the modest infringements are okay? Okay, let me try and keep reading this garbage. The NFA regulation at issue does not target ordinary firearms such as handguns, but only non-essential firearm accessories that are uniquely adaptable to criminal misuse. Who are these attorneys at the Department of Justice to say what firearm accessories are and are not essential? The Second Amendment protects all bearable arms, not just the bare minimum of components necessary to build a gun. Where would an essential versus non-essential parts leave us? Not full auto, semi-auto? Or perhaps the government could say semi-auto isn't essential and limit us to revolvers or bolt actions, or taken further, even perhaps single-shot muskets. Oh wait. This is what the anti-gunners have always wanted. What are Pam Bondi and President Trump doing approving these legal arguments? Let me continue a bit further. Law-abiding citizens remain free to possess suppressors so long as they register them. Yeah, right. Try telling Thomas Jefferson that he's free to possess the latest and greatest musket accessory so long as he pays a $200 tax to the king and registers it with the local redcoats. I don't think that's what they meant by freedom, guys. Man, this is a tough read, but I'll continue. Also, recent legislative changes mitigate Peterson's taxation concerns. Effective January 1st, 2026, there will be no taxation on making and transferring suppressors. See One Big Beautiful Bill Act. This is insane. Seriously, how dare the Department of Justice argue that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act reducing the NFA tax to $0 means that the NFA is now constitutional? It's a tax that does not generate revenue. Now it's just a blatant federal gun registration scheme. Oh, I guess I forgot that gun registration is a modest infringement and those are okay. These arguments are just awful. But they're also part of a pattern. DOJ has also refused to drop their cases or changes their arguments in our zero tolerance lawsuit, telling us that, and I quote, the government has no plans to abandon its previous arguments. In addition, DOJ has worked against us in cases where we're attempting to secure judgments. Instead, in many instances, the DOJ has moved to moot the cases, leaving the door wide open for a future anti-gun administration to repeat the tyrannical moves of the Biden era, even on something as simple as Michigan's CCW permit NICS exemption. The Department of Justice argues there's no basis for believing that the ATF will in the future do again what it did under the Biden administration.
By rescinding and replacing the challenge guidance, ATF has given plaintiffs all the relief they could hope for in this case, and this appeal should be dismissed as moot.
What do we say about the fact that it was the first Trump administration that did it? It's the second that's reversing. What's to say, still 3+ more years to change again?
I just don't think there's any plausible basis in the record for thinking that the ATF is going to do that, Your Honor. And so I don't think there's any basis for believing that the conduct the plaintiffs are challenging is going to occur, and certainly not in the foreseeable future. Again, I just don't think there's any basis for thinking that ATF is going to do that at any point.
But despite all the bad, they've also done some really good things. Earlier this year, the Department of Justice dropped the charges against someone for violating the Biden pistol brace rule. More recently, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, formerly of Fox News, announced that she would not be prosecuting anyone for carrying rifles in D.C. despite their gun control statutes. Recently, she even moved to vacate a conviction against the gun owner for carrying a high-capacity magazine, stating that it was the United States' position that the law was unconstitutional. We want to see the DOJ do more of that. Now that we're expecting the DOJ's first filing in our case against the National Firearms Act by November 13th, we're unsure of what they're going to respond with. Is DOJ going to take a bold stance for our Second Amendment rights and argue that the NFA is unconstitutional, especially with the $0 tax? Or will they go on arguing against our rights like they already did in Peterson and Rush already? Let's be clear though, either choice, whether they support or oppose this lawsuit, will have significant repercussions. For example, if the Department of Justice supports our case, the Trump administration, along with the body Department of Justice, will go down as the most pro-gun in history. Trump himself will become a historic gun rights champion, doing what no other elected politician had the power or the will to do: take the fight to the NFA. But if the Department of Justice opposes our lawsuit, they will have serious consequences. Gun owners will rightfully shun the Trump administration and be skeptical of their own insistence on their pro-gun credibility. But not only that, but the Department of Justice will be in opposition to President Trump's executive order protecting Second Amendment rights and the intent of the One Big Beautiful Bill. Knowing this, it would make sense for Pam Bondi's Department of Justice to work with GOA to gut the National Firearms Act. But we've seen both sides of DOJ, and we're now patiently awaiting their next move. Only time will tell, and we'll make sure you know what happens next, good or bad. Now, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below to stay up to date with GOA's latest fights for your rights.